we're bringing you boots on the ground insight from the ranchers, conservationists, and partners who are helping to preserve the best of the Golden State for generations to come. Join the California Rangeland Trust for inspiring stories of resilience, innovation, and hope as we get tuned into the land.
Hello and welcome back to a new season of Tune Into the Land. I'm your host, Michael Delbar. Happy New Year to you all. We are excited to be back with another season of Tune Into the Land. We have some exciting things in store for 2024 that we can't wait to share with you over the course of the next 12 months. But first, I want to start off by saying thank you to all of our loyal listeners who've joined us over the last 2 years since we embarked upon this podcasting journey. We look forward to bringing you more conversations with more amazing guests while also welcoming new listeners to the Tuned In family. You'll remember that previous seasons kicked off with our past board chair, Mr. Andy Mills. We appreciate Andy's service as he truly did an exceptional job leading us through our 25th anniversary year. And while his term as chairman has ended, we look forward to his continued involvement as a director on the board and the passing of the reins to a new, equally as talented and dedicated leader. This year means new leadership, and for this episode, we're thrilled to introduce our newly elected board chair, Carolyn Carey. Carolyn married into a fourth-generation ranching family. She splits her time between Napa and the small town of Alturas in Northern California's Modoc County. She's been on the Rangeland Trust Board for nearly 10 years, bringing insight and ideas that have helped propel the organization into what it is today. So as she steps into this new leadership position, we are excited to hear her goals for the organization and what she hopes to accomplish over her 2-year term. So with that, I welcome Carolyn Carey to the first episode of Season 3. Carolyn, why don't you tell us a little bit about yourself and ranching history?
I was born and raised in Napa. My dad raised horses, and I actually married into ranching, which has been a great life. I mean, it's just been fantastic, completely different. Big ranch, lots of cattle, back and forth, winter pasture at Lake Berryessa, which is where I have a home. And then the home ranch is in Modoc County. And I spend most of my time in Modoc County, but I'm married into it. It's great. I'm happy to have done that.
Well, you've taken that involvement to all kinds of high levels, both in NCBA, National Cattlemen's Beef Association, California Cattlemen's Association, California Beef Council, and along with serving on boards of multiple other organizations like the Range Conservation Foundation. So between the traveling all across Northern California, you've been very active in all these organizations. Tell us a little bit about that involvement and why you decided to get involved with all these different livestock organizations.
Well, the involvement, actually, I was asked, and I should learn to say no because, I probably belong to way too many.
I think we've all benefited from you not saying no,
well,
so that's a good thing.
But originally, my involvement on boards in the industry was I was asked to be a member of the Modoc County Cattlemen's Association. And I was really glad to do that. I ended up being the president of the Modoc County Cattlemen's Association, and that led to my involvement in California Cattlemen. And I turned out to be, or was elected to be, an second vice president of the California Cattlemen's Association. And I've just been involved with them and NCBA committees. I was appointed to the California Beef Council. I'm still a member of the California Beef Council.
So there's from the state level, both with the Cattlemen's Association, the local level with the Modoc, NCBA on the national level, and then get back to the state level on the Beef Council, and then the Range Conservation Foundation, which is nationwide as well. What do you see as the role of these groups and organizations play in the livestock industry? How important are they?
I think they're very important. And I think one of the things, for example, the Beef Council spreads spreads word and education about our industry to people who don't otherwise know. I mean, we are so far, our population now is so far removed from the land by so many generations now that it's a common phrase, people don't know where their food comes from. And so I'm really pleased to see what the California Beef Council does to, for education. I think it's terrific, and how they do it is amazing. And we don't see it in Modoc County, for example, because that's preaching to the choir, and the Beef Council can't afford to do that. They spend their money where it's going to do the most good. It doesn't do any good to tell people and ranchers in Modoc County, what beef does. So anyway, I'm really pleased to be a part of that.
Targeting the bigger urban areas
and people who don't know anything about the ranching industry, where their food comes from.
I always thought it was interesting that the beef councils are funded through checkoff dollars for every dollar for every head of livestock sold. But some of these Midwest states like Kansas that process a lot of livestock through sales, they contribute some of their checkoff dollars to California.
To California, exactly.
Explain why that happens. I always thought this was really interesting.
It really is interesting because, as you say, Kansas, Oklahoma, places like that have their population, their state population is more cattle than people, and they don't need those advertising dollars. And they partner with states like California that have huge populations. Again, like we say, people don't understand or know. So they funnel their money to California, not all of it, but a certain amount to California for the advertising, because they gain from it too. I mean, they're providing beef across the nation. So yeah, it's a great program, and it's not very old. I mean, it's 10 years maybe, something like that. I mean, it's relatively new that they started
dollars
doing
are coming
that.
over.
Yeah, dollars are coming over, but they do it, all the time now. It's big bang for the buck.
Well, you've taken that experience and you were a founding member of the Western Ranchers Beef Cooperative. Tell us a little bit more about that. What spurred you to found that organization, and what was the role?
It was a group of ranchers, again, some of whom were founding members of this organization, got together for certification, for management certification of livestock, which was unheard of when we started this in 1998, maybe 96, 98. It's commonplace now, and all the drug companies offer certifications for, your livestock. And so it just outgrew us, but that's what it was to guarantee the consumer how these animals had been treated, not just welfare, but management, all the management, they've been vaccinated, they've been, handled this way. It was unheard of at the time.
You kind of led the way and broke ground.
Right. It was great.
Out of that was born the Born and Raised in USA label. Tell us the history there.
I was at an NCBA meeting one time when country of origin labeling was a big issue many years ago.
Still is.
Yes, it still is. It has come back. It's resurfaced. And at the time, I was in a meeting and I thought, well, why don't we just label it? If it's a big deal, let's just do it. And I thought, I'll look into that when I get home. And I sort of slapped myself. I'll never forget this. I sort of slapped myself and said, you're here now. Go do something about it. And so I went into the trade show to the USDA booth. And I talked to them and I said, can we label beef? I mean, that was and they said, oh, sure. And I said, okay, there's got to be something stopping us. Well, anyway, I went through all steps of what's involved, and there was nothing to stop it except to get the system approved. Had to be verified. So I went through USDA in Washington for many months and got the label. It's a beef label. It's a, fish, game, several other things. Anyway, I got that all approved through USDA as an official meat label and verification system. And so there it is. And several people have used it. Then that was right before mandatory labeling came on. So when mandatory labeling came, a voluntary system was not really useful, though people did do it because they liked the label. So, and it's still available. So anyway.
How does a producer go about utilizing that label?
Just call me. Yeah, a producer uses it on his livestock. He just certifies that his livestock are born and raised in the USA, and then the meat label is available to any grocer or whoever who purchases that beef. So just has to be verified. That's all.
I think has a lot of value, especially we learned during COVID,
right? How
our empty shelves and people really starting to wake up to where's my meat coming from, and now having, and this is an example with you said the resurgence of the cool issue,
right? And
the labeling issue is having proof that this livestock, this meat that I'm serving, was born and raised in the United States.
Right. Yes, there are people who think even when mandatory came in, I would ask people who were using it, you have to do this anyway. And are you sure you really want to be paying for this? And it's not terribly expensive, but, and they said, yes, we like it. We're going to stick with it. So they did.
Very cool.
Yeah. Well, here's some bumper stickers for you.
So stewardship in your life and your ranch has always been a high priority.
Yes.
Tell us about what it's like to ranch in the upper reaches of the state in Alturas, California.
The forgotten corner of California. It's high desert country. It's cold in the winter and hot in the summer. Our ranch is one of the best watered ranches in northeastern California. The Pitt River runs through the home ranch, and we have the river irrigates meadows. We have meadows there, a couple thousand acres of meadow, and then another ranch up on Devil's Garden. As far as what it's like, ranching, what ranching everywhere is like. The return address on my envelope says Carey Ranches providing for wildlife by managing the land for livestock. And it's said that for many, many years. And that's just what we do. We have ducks and geese and, everything. Deer, antelope, mink in the river. It's just interesting. But yeah.
Well, that conservation ethic led you to be a founding member of the Modoc County Land Use Committee.
Yes.
Without assuming the nexus there, why don't you explain how your philosophy that you've just described translates into that committee and what that committee does for Modoc?
It's the management of Modoc County is more than 70% state or federally owned. So, most every rancher is also a permittee on BLM or Forest Service, National Park Service. We have them all. And what the Land Use Committee did is start what's legally called coordination between the federal agencies and the county for the benefit of the county and the rangeland, the forest or BLM or whatever. making those, not all the management decisions, of course, we wouldn't want to get into every little thing that they do, but there are certain major decisions that involve permittees, involve, whoever. And that's what we wanted to be involved in, and legally are able to be involved. And we're one of the few coordinating counties in the country. And it's been extremely successful. Extremely successful. We just had a meeting. We have a meeting every month, and with the agencies, and to coordinate the use. I mean, we share things back and forth. What do you think about this? What do you think about that? Well, if you do that, then this will happen. And it's just coordination is what it is. It works great. Different than collaboration. That's a whole different deal. But anyway,
you feel that that's been more effective for Modoc than other areas that have heavy federal and state land ownerships? Yes,
I do. And I'm not quite sure why, except that we also have really good land managers up there too in the federal agencies. And so it's been easier to work with than a lot of places, but coordination is the tool that will enable any of those places to have more input in what is happening on the ground.
Conservation easements on lands throughout the state it's kind of an opportunistic program.
Right.
It's easier to fund easements on lands that are closer to urban areas where the development pressures are higher. I think it's probably safe to say there's not extreme development pressure in Modoc County.
Correct.
But you did a conservation easement on a ranch, but it was done with NRCS through the Wetland Reserve Program.
Right.
Tell us a little bit about your decision to do an easement, what led to the decision to do it with NRCS, how that experience has been.
Well, like many people, we needed it for an estate settlement. And I tried hard to get had an appraisal, everything else to fund it or to get the easement through California Rangeland Trust, and the development at that time, the development value was not there. Since then, that has changed a little bit in that the development pressure there now is from intensive ag. That's when wild rice was a big deal. That's not so true anymore, but I mean, the development pressure is there. And my husband, Pete, said, we are not going to let these meadows be laser leveled and turned into rice fields. And we needed money to settle the estate. So after we found we couldn't use California Rangeland Trust, the NRCS Wetland Reserve a grazing pilot program came, because I didn't want to do an NRCS easement if we couldn't use the land. I mean, what's the point there? So that's when they had the grazing pilot, and the money they were offering was really good for our area. So that's what we did, and it's been okay. It's been all right.
So when there is development pressure and development occurs,
right,
and a lot of time that takes out some of that critical habitat and has impacts to threatened or endangered species or themselves or their habitat, which requires mitigation.
Right. So
you were instrumental in developing a program with the Department of Fish and Wildlife, or used to be the Fish and Game, to provide mitigation for those impacts on private working lands. Tell us a little bit more about that experience.
For years, as part of the land use committee and several other instances, we watched ranches being bought in the area, northeastern California, in the area by Fish and Game, not just for mitigation, but for whatever. A lot of it was mitigation. And then they stopped using the land and allowing whatever ranching process or procedure was going on there, haying, whatever it was, whatever made it desirable in the first place, they stopped doing, which stopped the whole reason. And I thought the whole thing was just crazy. And so we had a pipeline come through the ranch. And I didn't dream this up until too late for ours, because we could have mitigated all kinds of things. But the more I thought about it, the more I thought, the developer has to purchase land, a certain amount of acres that Fish and Game decides. They have to purchase that land and turn it over to Fish and Game to manage, which we all know at the time, they didn't have the money or they were not able to manage what they had, let alone anything new that they were requiring developers to provide. So we thought, now, wait a minute, why not put an easement on it? The rancher is the best manager you're ever going to find anyway, because he's been doing it all these years. And so, I sold it to Fish and Game. Not sold, but I mean,
the concept.
Talked with it. Yeah, the concept. And so they thought, that's not a bad, it took a while, but they finally thought, that's not too bad. So we came to a CRT meeting down here somewhere and presented it, and look where we are. Yeah, it's.
And was that your first introduction to the Rangeland Trust?
No, I knew the founders really well, and so I'd been to lots of meetings and stuff, and that's what made me think, California Rangeland Trust can hold these easements. This is perfect.
So today, mitigation easements are one of the three forms of a conservation easement. One was the purchase of those development rights with cash.
Right.
Two is the acquisition of those development rights through a donation, with the landowner taking advantage of the tax benefits. And the third is that mitigation. And that mitigation easement is, those projects are actually a big part of what we do in our portfolio now. And they tend to be, not always, but tend to be smaller acreages. But for the landowner, where the requirement is to continue doing what you're doing, that habitat, those critters are there because of the practices that have been in place.
Exactly.
So continue to do that, and you get paid to do so.
Right.
As one of our landowner partners is fond of saying, that the wildlife species they protected through their easement are the most lucrative livestock they've ever raised. That concept has been really important for projects throughout the state.
Yeah, I'm really glad, because, as I say, I watched the failures of Fish and Game purchasing ground that they didn't have the manpower or funds to manage, and stopping, like I say, whatever happened on it that made it desirable in the first place.
Well, you made a big change in the way things are done in the state. So congratulations.
Good.
That's been
Good.
Been a big boom for not only the landowners, but also it cuts down on the cost of those projects too, because no longer is the state acquiring land and fee that they don't have the resources to manage.
Right.
But it's leaving those lands in private ownership. Those landowners are still managing that at a fraction of the cost, and it stays on the tax roll.
Stays on the tax roll. That's it. Exactly. Stays on the tax roll. And it costs the developer, as you alluded to, much less than an outright purchase of the same amount of ground.
So tell us about how all of this we've talked about led up to your involvement with the Rangeland Trust.
I guess just being involved with the people through California Cattlemen, the people who founded California Rangeland Trust. I was involved with them at that time, and used to, because I was nearby the meetings, I would go to the meetings, and that's about it. I mean, I just, I knew everybody there, so once again got asked to serve on a board.
Well, it's been nearly 10 years.
Oh, gosh, yes, okay.
What's that experience been like?
It's been great. I get to sit in on all the closed sessions. No, it's been terrific. I really very happy, enjoy being involved with California Rangeland Trust. And
so our annual meeting is in December each year. And this last December, you were elected as the new board chair for the next 2 years. So share with us what some of your goals are during your coming 2 years of leadership of the organization.
I want to make sure that we're protecting ranchers. We are ranchers. Our board is ranchers. And we have this huge waiting list of ranchers. And we've grown so much thanks to the staff and boards before me. California Rangeland Trust is extremely well known now, popular, growing in size, is a conservation organization, if you will, that appeals to ranchers because of ranchers on the board. And I am determined that stays the same. And as we've said, the bylaws insist on that. But I think it's critical that we keep ranchers helping ranchers. I mean, that's the biggest goal as far as I'm concerned. We've got a huge waiting list. No other conservation organization does. So
I think that's testament to the board itself, obviously.
Well, and the staff.
And the fact, as you mentioned, that to be on the board, a person has to be involved in the ranching industry, ranching business. And that, since it is in the bylaws, it's not easily changed. And it would take a lot of change in the board to get to the point to change those bylaws, which just frankly, I can never see happening. So that trust that the organization has developed within the ranching industry is extremely valuable, which is evident by our queue of projects. But it's also on the environmental community, I think, sees us too and has grown to respect the work we do, because we're getting the conservation work done that they may not be able to get done.
Exactly.
So it's a win-win across the board. And so the Rangeland Trust has become that bridge organization.
Right.
Even with that, even with the rancher involvement and the trust that we have in the community, there's still skeptics out there that wonder why someone would do a conservation easement, because doesn't that mean that it's government coming to take control of your land?
There is that skepticism, and it's in sort of harkens back to the Beef Council. It's in areas where they don't hear our story. They don't. My home county, Modoc County, huge private property rights county and population. And it's difficult to describe in, a sound bite how California Rangeland Trust is all about property rights too, completely, which is not the case with a lot of other conservation groups or environmental conservation groups, if you will. So I just think that we have a great story to tell. We've been telling it for years and years, and I think the results are there to see, and we'll get there. We'll get there.
I think you're right, and I've had conversations with folks that were of that mindset that this is the heavy hand of government coming in.
Yeah.
And when we explain that, what is a private property right if not your ability to sell your development rights?
Exactly.
That is a private property right that you as a private property owner is making a decision to do something with. Mm-hmm. And so that recognizing that is a private property right in itself should show that this is what it's all about. Right. This is what the Rangeland Trust is about. You would not find stronger advocates for private property than the board members of this organization. So I think when that's understood, those folks that I've talked to that were skeptical have come around to believe that, okay, and understand that I get it now. I think that makes a big difference in how this goes forward, because there are still folks out there that don't grasp that, and it's a lack of really understanding what differentiates the Rangeland Trust and even our fellow partners across the country in the partnership of Rangeland Trust in the Western states. There's 8 other states like ours that have that same philosophy. So recognizing that, and as we talked about in previous times, conservation easements aren't for everyone. Right. But it's a tool, and it's a tool that's very valuable, and it's a tool that can save the ranch. The Rangeland Trust was formed to be that tool, so take government out of the picture.
Exactly. And which is huge. It's huge. And which is why we have a waiting list, of 90 plus ranchers who no one else has a waiting list like that. No other organization.
And we're moving through them faster and faster.
Yes. It's great. How many have we conserved now so far?
So 2023 was a great year in terms of closed projects. We closed 9 projects that brought us to 89 conserved ranches across the state. We now have nearly 390,000 acres conserved. We're pushing up against that 100 ranch mark and 400,000 acres. Both of which we'll get to hopefully this year with pretty soon. The conservation team has done a wonderful job on the grant writing and getting the funds and the fund development side of the organizations, raising the dollars on the private side. And of course, our communications and outreach team have done a yeoman's job of telling the story and getting that word out there. So it's a great team that you are now the head of.
Oh, gosh.
So congratulations again for taking on the chair role. And I know from a staff standpoint, we're really excited about these next 2 years.
Well, thank you.
We look forward to continuing the great work and under your leadership.
Oh, gosh. Thank you very much. Appreciate it. I appreciate you all.
That closes the gate on this episode of Tune Into the Land. Be sure to hit that follow button so that you can be reminded when new episodes drop. Also, if you like what you are hearing, consider leaving us a review so we can learn more about you and encourage more people to listen in. Thanks for listening, and tune in next month.